burncycle. It's fine. It's on the bad side of good, but only just. This game contains a perfectly plottable curve of emotions. At first, when I opened the box, I was like, oh, yeah. And then I was like, but then eventually I kind of grew to be like, by the end. It's great and it's terrible. It sings and it flounders. It has peaks and it has valleys. It's dull and it's exciting. It's broken and it's a big box of neoprene. Time for a review.
Where are you going?
I don't know. Biographically, you're looking at the next game from Chip Theory Games, the plastic purveyors behind the excitably broken Too Many Bones and some other games. Do we talk about the gimmick? Oh, go on. We'll talk about the gimmick. Their games are all waterproof. How kooky, how silly. I hate it. This is a borderline irresponsible design decision, and we'll come back to it later, but I'm reluctant to even joke about the amount of plastic that this game uses because it might have the tone of someone saying like, oh, you know your friend Gary, he's such a racist, without actually doing anything to address the problem. You know Chip Theory, their games are all waterproof. Can they stop it, please? It's making everyone uncomfortable.
What is burncycle?
I'm glad you asked, Matthew. It's a heist game. You've got a big floor plan, a bunch of rooms, some locked doors, and some guards. Get in and get out while pilfering bits and bobs.
What's the twist?
Well, here, burncycle is like a helter-skelter of twists and turns. Hey! Woohoo! I feel sick! First off, you are robots, a resistant cell of battery boys in the far future, where corporations control everything and humans are the baddies. What's new? Everyone on your team has a core talent and a bunch of extra unlockable skills. Maybe you're great at smashing through walls, great at popping heads, great at having a little friend who does all your busy work for you. But how do you unlock those extra skills? Well, you're going to spend a resource called power, which not only acts as your unlock currency, it also determines how many dice, read actions, you're going to get in that round. But it also determines your maximum health. Mamma mia. Hold my beer. Controlling your robots is similarly weird. The humans have stolen the code that allows you independent, autonomous control. So instead, your programming is dependent on a command module. This little guy is essentially a robot who's had all of their brain functions removed and replaced with the sole ability to boss you around, totally devoid of life or feeling, just a series of directives, commands, orders. This is the burncycle, a frankly very nifty little action selection programming mechanism. Essentially, on every turn, you're going to take the actions in the burncycle from left to right, and you can take any of the game's major actions on any of the chips, but if you take an action that matches a chip, you optimize it, taking a little nifty extra bonus, and basically anyone can socket chips into the burncycle at any time, meaning you can create these baton-passing moments across time itself.
But to ensure that as players you're not drowning in all of this wibbly-wobbly stuff, the actions you take are actually very straightforward. Purple chips let you move your bots around and do big slaps on guards or walls. Green chips let you interface with terminals to dig up juicy data bonuses or draw network cards for more juicy bonuses in the network phase. No, don't look at that yet. And blue chips will let you try your hand at a little keypad minigame to beep, 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 unlock a door. But gumming up the works is this chip belonging to the captain, the boss of this floor, who will do something nasty right in the middle of your turn. Very annoying.
But it's not that simple. Your power/health/currency determines how many dice you're going to get for your turn, and you're going to roll them before taking every action. And these default dice are cruel. So there is a very fun little push your luck minigame here, where your very slight slate of resources gets stretched thinly across this action programming system, turning boring tasks into fun, wobbly splashes of improvisation. It's like drinking on the job. No. And that's it. It's really that simple. It's not that simple. Once you've used the burn cycle to move around the main board, you'll then plug into Cyberspace, using the same sequencing to whirl around the network. Here, each chip determines your movement. A green chip moves you to the nearest green spot, purple to the nearest purple spot, etc, etc. But if you bump into a hub, one of these red spots, you'll yank bonuses out the network like intestines from a hamster.
If you get to the core, then you're going to get lots of treats. You get lots of treats. If you get to the core, you're going to get a bunch of bonuses before you then reset the cycle. And if you've got any network cards on the way around there, then you're going to get some of these spots spaffing out even more bonuses. But like the main board, this is not just your space. Red pings belonging to the CEO of the company are hunting you down, hoping to boot you out of the network if they come knocking at your digital door. And at the end of each turn, something bad happens. The corporation goons move around, chasing you if you got spotted in the corridor, or just patrolling around if not, constantly checking around them for signs of robot intruders. And the burn cycle is getting tattered up on each and every turn, meaning you have to constantly feed it chips to keep it in good condition like an aggressive and very needy seagull.
Of course, there's a whole host of other stuff here. Equipment, objectives, awareness rules, keys, surveillance dice, hiding spots, and maybe most importantly, this big threat track that's constantly getting worse as the game goes on. But listen, I've covered the most immediately exciting stuff about Burn Cycle, the bits where the thrills are at. And what this game sings at is having those turns when everything just snaps into sync, when your mastery of the systems comes to the fore and your turns explode into dopamine as you hit every single bumper on the pinball table. As well as this, Burn Cycle can be a game that's ferociously funny because you get yourself into so many pickles. Your command module essentially acts as a toddler that you need to cart around and look after, so maybe you might just opt for hiding it in a cupboard the whole floor. That's very funny. Smashing down walls only to find a room packed with guards like a robotic Kool-Aid man. I am having a chuckle. And in the middle, when things are neither going horribly or beautifully or humorously, that's where your brains start whirring and Burn Cycle shows its full hand. Oh, I've rolled badly here, but maybe I can use this ability to take care of this guard, or maybe you can bust through a wall and give me a hand. Maybe we can find some way to optimize ourselves out of this mess. And we should talk about the hugeness of the content in this box. 4 different corporations, a whole bunch of different bots to try out, tons of different bosses to take on and missions to attempt. And that's not even including these 2 launch day expansions that add another corporation and even more bots. There's so much stuff in this game, it's packed with, ooh, let's try that next time.
So it's a game that's almost endlessly replayable.
Yes, you can play it again and again.
But would you want to keep playing it again and again and again?
If you couldn't tell by the slightly tempering apprehension in my voice and the fact that I chickened out of a true mid-review turnaround by slapping that conflictedness at the front, I don't think that Burn Cycle works consistently. The first few games I played were delightful, grappling with the system, splashing around in a sandpit that had just the right amount of razor blades hidden inside it. Tense and snappy, decadent but deserving. But for every time you have a game of Burn Cycle where you hit that perfect racing line and everything pops off, you'll also have a game where the randomness splashed throughout these systems creates a game that's challenging, yeah, but fun, no. So much of my criticism of Burn Cycle stems from its approach to scenario design, namely that there isn't much of it. When you set up a game of Burn Cycle, you pick random bots, a random corporation, a random boss, and hit play. Do you want to spend the next 4 hours having fun? Burn Cycle asks. Best I can do is maybe. It's hard to explain this stuff properly without getting into the weeds of the systems of Burn Cycle that, frankly, I'm trying to avoid for clarity and time. But essentially, every time you play a scenario, you run the risk of rolling a random combination of bots and flaws and enemies that might lead to a scenario that is just not fun at all to get through. These are devoid of problem solving. They're like trying to climb up a greased up ladder made of string. A combination of factors might mean that you don't even have chips to put in the burn cycle in the first place. A particular mission might have the threat rocket upwards in a way that even perfect play cannot offset. Or you arrive on a floor that is rammed with guards you cannot kill that seek and destroy you before you even have a chance to get out the lift.
But Tom, just to drink the devil's advocate for just one quick moment, this game being completely random isn't that exciting. Lots of games we love. Cosmic Encounter, every game is random, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they're not as good, but it's overall great. So isn't it true here?
Kinda. Like, maybe that randomness would be exciting and interesting if it didn't kind of just feel like the game was cheating. In this, I think you lack a sort of game director presence. You don't have someone who's controlling the flow of the narrative. So when you're doing badly, it just feels like you're being beaten over the head with quite unclear rules.
Right, so it's like Imperial Assault, but when you're just absolutely destroying the other players for the whole campaign, you don't stop doing that.
Zero empathy mode.
You just crush them forever.
You know, throughout all of this, it's like the laissez-faire attitude towards like interactions and permutations means you've always got your nose in the rulebook. To the extent that I was still looking things up like 6 or 7 games in. We even got into the boggy territory of just kind of reckoning what would happen in certain situations. From what I can tell, this is better than Too Many Bones' situation with the rules, but it's still not great.
And it's not even just that when you're playing it, the missions are always too hard and crushing and punishing. In some of the scenarios we played, rather than the hitting the fan, it sort of just slowly dribbled all over the table and nothing happened and the game was just sluggish and slow and not much of a challenge. Now, it could be fun if this stuff was quick to set up, quick to tear down, quick to play, but it isn't. And when you hit a game-breaking situation halfway through a 4-hour, 3-floor epic, well, that just feels horrible.
It feels like what Burncycle needs is a kind of detailed, authored narrative, a set of scenarios to get you through the game's systems. But instead, what you have is a system where the game just dumps a bunch of stuff on you, says something about emergent gameplay, and goes to have a lie down. At its very best, Burncycle almost manages to provide the thrill of a game that has a tailored narrative. And that is a shame. For all of its components, this game is a wonderful toy box, the tactile motions of which are continually satisfying and had me coming back for more and more. But I just don't think that this game earns the confidence to tell you that any combination of its various pulleys, levers, gadgets, and gizmos will spit out an experience that is worthy of your time and money. An obvious comparison here is Tim Fowers' excellent Burgle Bros games. Those are far more engaging when they're engaging and far more funny throughout. But these games also throw so much randomness at the player, but they also throw you plenty of tools to control, temper, avoid, or problem solve around that randomness. And the pace of the turns and the speed of resetting the game means that a loss can quickly be dealt with as funny rather than annoying. It's less replayable, sure, but why bother replaying a game that is not nearly as good? Look, with Burncycle, these deluxe, ridiculous components are looking for a deft hand to guide you through their systems and to make them sing. But what you get instead is a randomly generated mess that sticks the landing maybe 25% of the time.
And somewhat inevitably, let's now talk about these ridiculous components. Now, I didn't play a part in a Too Many Bones review, and I am sure that game is great, but I did feel a little bit ill seeing that much plastic, and yet here we are again in neoprene and poker chip land. The problem here, though, is I don't really understand why it is the way it is, apart from the fact that chip theory games just do this, which just doesn't seem like a good reason. We bang this drum a lot, but a lot of this could have just been cardboard, right? To start with the obvious, the neoprene. Yeah, it's waterproof. Are you actually going to play? I mean, we can barely play this on the table. You're not going to get this into a jacuzzi. And secondly, I'm somebody who irritates the internet by frequently having drinks and food near board games. And everyone goes, don't do that, don't do that. And you know what? I do it all the time. I put bowls of soup in the middle of the table around a board game. We dip bread into it and then put it into our mouths over the cards in the board games. And you know what happens? Nothing. Every now and then you get a little spillage, you just wipe it up. Fine, doesn't matter. So is there really any need for this level of long-term protection? Particularly as my copy of Cosmic Encounter is absolutely shagged. It's been played hundreds of times. And like worst case scenario, your game just ends up like grubby. Who cares? Maybe some people do, but this much? I don't think you should. Secondly, these poker chips. And this is the real killer here. You're not even using them in the way that it's fun to use poker chips. There are a couple of exceptions in the game where you do have some little stacks, maybe just 1 or 2 or 3 things on your board. But the majority of the time, it's just one poker chip everywhere. Yes, they're kind of fun to move around, but the joy of poker chips is not here. Why? Why is it all poker chips and neoprene and waterproof? It's just too big, too expensive, and it's frankly silly and not in the way that I like.
I think I could cope with this scattershot approach to design and keep Burncycle in my collection as an unusual broken oddity, if not for one final realization, which is that I don't really know how much I enjoy this game when it's going well. Or really well, I should say. Most of the time, doing something well in this game means avoiding it. So when you're really succeeding, you're ignoring a lot of the more interesting systems. Guards patrol endlessly within their own little rooms. Robots stay in good health and risk vanishes, and you walk all over Bo Zephyrs. And here, the scenarios often boil down into a waiting game. One of them just had us waiting in rooms while we watched all the guards go and attend a meeting. And that's when you realise that there is a thinness to what you actually do in this game that just isn't that engaging. The exciting push your luck dice game gets turned into a roll and move, which is dull in a 2-player game, but excruciating when the game is stretched over its maximum of 4 players. Never again. But when you're doing really badly, you're doing really badly. This game can crush you into a fine paste of miserability.
Miserability, but the sweet spot in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's what you're going for, right?
It's really sweet. But is it £120 worth of sweet? I don't know. What's there can get really juicy, but that juice is only worth the squeeze sometimes.
Much like myself.
Yeah, that's fair. Matt, I think this might be my first ever, properly negative review. What do you do to relax after getting all stressed in times like these?
The internet's going to be annoyed. The only thing that works for me, actually, I bought this. It's DVD off of Jeff Engelstein, and it just helps me chill out.
Getting relaxed. Relaxation for board gamers.
You are a card in the hands of Rodney Smith. Neelan from Board Game Barrage is rolling a d20 inside your brain. Jeff from the Dragon's Tomb is explaining a game really, really well. Danielle Standring is closing a box very slowly to make a little farty noise. Matthew Lees and his big bowl of soup are miles away from your table. Everything is well.